On April 17, 1961, approximately 1,400 Cuban exiles trained by the CIA landed at the Bay of Pigs on the southern coast of Cuba. The operation was designed to trigger a popular uprising against Fidel Castro's government. The uprising did not happen. Within 72 hours, the invasion force had been defeated. More than 1,100 men were captured. The United States paid a ransom of $53 million in food and medical supplies for their release. President Kennedy, who had approved the operation, publicly accepted full responsibility. Privately, he asked his advisors how an operation so obviously flawed could have survived the review process that was supposed to catch exactly these kinds of errors. The people who had reviewed the plan were not incompetent. The Joint Chiefs, the CIA leadership, Kennedy's own senior advisors, these were, by any measure, among the most experienced foreign policy and intelligence professionals in the country. The plan had gone through extensive briefing sessions. Concerns had been discussed, and the operation had proceeded with the unanimous support of the people in the room. Irving Janis, a Yale psychologist who studied this case in detail in the early 1970s, concluded that the unanimity itself was the problem, not a product of genuine agreement, but of a process dynamic he called groupthink, the tendency of highly cohesive groups, under certain conditions, to prioritize consensus over critical analysis, in ways that the group members themselves don't recognize as they're happening. Janis's work is one of the most cited contributions to organizational psychology. It is also one of the most frequently simplified, reduced to, groups make bad decisions, when the actual finding is far more specific, and far more applicable to the decisions being made in rooms that look nothing like the Kennedy White House. Irving Janis identified 8 classic symptoms of groupthink that leaders and observers can look for as warning signs that a team is sliding into a dysfunctional consensus. These symptoms are grouped into 3 broader categories: overestimation of the group, closed-mindedness, and pressures toward uniformity. The most important of these for organizational purposes is the one that gets the least attention in popular treatments of groupthink: the illusion of unanimity. The illusion of unanimity is specifically not the same as actual unanimity. It is the condition in which the members of a group each individually have reservations about the decision being made, and each individually believes that the reservations are uniquely theirs, that everyone else in the room is more confident than they are. The result is a group where every individual has doubts and no individual expresses them, because the expressed confidence of the others makes private doubt feel like a personal failure rather than a legitimate analytical input. The meeting minutes of the Bay of Pigs planning sessions, reviewed by Janis and subsequent historians, show that several advisors who expressed full support for the operation in the sessions had, in private communications, significant reservations about specific elements of the plan. They didn't express these reservations because the consensus around them felt authoritative, because the people around them seemed certain, and their own uncertainty felt like evidence of their limitations rather than evidence of the plan's problems. This is the specific mechanism that makes groupthink so dangerous. It is invisible from the inside, because the person experiencing it interprets their own doubt as the anomaly rather than as the signal. The group's expressed confidence becomes the reference point, and private uncertainty is measured against it and found wanting. Have you ever been in a room where you had reservations about a decision and stayed silent because everyone else seemed more certain than you, and found out later that others had the same reservations but had also stayed silent? Leave a comment. Janis's classic example was the Bay of Pigs invasion, where U.S. government officials ignored clear risks in favor of consensus, leading to a failed invasion of Cuba. But the mechanism Janis identified is not confined to foreign policy disasters or high-stakes government decisions. The same 8 symptoms appear in the board meeting where a flawed acquisition goes through without meaningful challenge. They appear in the product launch review where a team that has spent 18 months on a product doesn't want to hear that the user testing results are ambiguous. They appear in the investment committee that approves a position because the analyst who proposed it is senior and confident, and the junior analyst who has doubts doesn't feel like this is the right moment to raise them. Under the sway of groupthink, Even highly intelligent and well-intentioned teams can make irrational or catastrophic decisions because dissenting viewpoints are suppressed and warnings are ignored. The suppression is almost never explicit. Nobody tells the junior analyst to keep their mouth shut. The suppression operates through the social dynamics of the room, through the specific discomfort of being the person who slows things down, who raises an objection when momentum is high, who expresses uncertainty when the group's expressed register is confidence. Those dynamics are present in every high cohesion group that has been working together long enough to develop implicit norms about what the group's conversations look like. One of the most tragic examples of groupthink was the 1986 Challenger space shuttle explosion. Engineers had expressed concerns about the shuttle's O-rings and cold temperatures, but NASA officials, eager to proceed with the launch, downplayed the warnings. What makes the Challenger case instructive in a groupthink analysis is that the concerns were expressed, they were not suppressed in the simple sense. The engineers said, directly, that they were worried about the O-rings. What happened next is the groupthink mechanism. The concerns were heard, addressed with the reframing of the burden of proof, and then the group proceeded as if the concerns had been resolved when they had only been overridden. The meeting notes show a group that wanted to launch and that processed the engineers' concerns in a way designed to maintain the launch decision rather than in a way designed to honestly evaluate whether the launch was safe. The concerns existed. The process ate them. If the specific mechanism by which legitimate concerns get processed into non-existence, not suppressed, but absorbed and neutralized, is what makes this channel worth your time, the like is the direct signal. Groupthink in a corporate setting looks different from the Bay of Pigs or Challenger in its surface details, but it follows the same structural logic. A cohesive team, under time pressure, with momentum behind a particular direction, processes information in ways that maintain the direction, rather than that honestly evaluate it. The acquisition that's already been announced internally, the product launch that's already been scheduled, the strategic partnership where the LOI has already been signed. In each of these situations, the social and organizational conditions that produce groupthink are fully present. The group is cohesive. The decision has momentum. The cost of reversing course has become high, and the person who raises a serious objection is, by the logic of the situation, the person causing the problem rather than identifying it. The Enron board approved a set of accounting arrangements that its own members had reservations about. The Theranos board approved investments in a technology that its members were not qualified to evaluate and had not sought independent evaluation of. The WeWork board approved a corporate governance structure that gave its founder unprecedented control, a structure that multiple members had private reservations about because the momentum of the IPO process had created conditions in which those reservations were expressed quietly rather than as genuine blocks. In each case, the thing that was not said in the room was more important than what was said. Janis did not just diagnose groupthink. He identified the structural conditions that produce it, and, by extension, the structural interventions that prevent it. The conditions: high group cohesion, insulation from outside perspectives, a directive leader who signals their preference early, and time pressure that makes extended deliberation feel costly. When all of these are present, the probability of groupthink increases substantially. The interventions are correspondingly structural rather than cultural, designating a specific person as the critic whose explicit role is to challenge the consensus rather than support it, requiring the group to separate idea generation from idea evaluation so that the evaluation phase isn't contaminated by the social dynamics that supported the idea's original emergence, having the leader explicitly withhold their own preference until the end of the deliberation, so that the expressed preference doesn't become the anchor that everyone else calibrates to. The most powerful intervention Janis identified is the one that requires the most institutional support, bringing in outside evaluators who have no stake in the decision's outcome, and giving those evaluators both the access to the full decision context and the explicit mandate to disagree. Most organizations implement none of these interventions. High group cohesion is actively cultivated as a positive. Leaders communicate their preferences early because doing so feels like providing direction. Time pressure is treated as a fact of organizational life, rather than as a groupthink enabling condition. The outside evaluator is a cost center, not a decision quality investment. The practical thing: the next time you're in a decision process that has momentum, that has a clear leader preference, and that is under time pressure, the next time the conditions for groupthink are fully present, ask one question before the decision is made. Is there anyone in this room who has a reservation about this that they haven't expressed? Then wait. Don't ask for the objection. Don't provide the space. Just ask if there is one. The frequency with which hands go up or eyes avoid contact, or the silence has a specific quality that will tell you more about what the room actually thinks than the stated consensus that has formed around you. The next episode looks at what happens after the groupthink is recognized, after someone in the room does ask that question and gets an answer, and the specific difficulty of acting on information that the group has already collectively decided not to act on. This content was developed with the support of artificial intelligence tools and underwent human review, editorial curation, and approval before publication. The analysis presented here is strictly educational and philosophical in nature, grounded in behavioral psychology and classical stoicism.